Assalamu Warahmatullahi Wabarakatuh.
Here's a collection of stories of Umar bin Khattab that are very inspiring. But before that, we will discuss a little about the Caliph's biography. Umar bin Khattab was the second Caliph of Islam after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He ruled from 634 AD to 644 AD, which is 10 years. Umar was also one of the main companions of the Prophet and was also the father of Hafsa. The wife of the Prophet Umar was one of the great leaders and a role model for the people. Even in some traditions mention him as the most important companion of the Prophet after Abu Bakr. He was nicknamed by the Prophet Muhammad Al-Faruq, which means the person who can separate between truth and falsehood. During his leadership, the Caliphate became one of the new major powers for Muslims, and in the Middle East, Umar managed to take over the leadership of 2/3 of the Eastern Roman Empire. This expansion of territory was also followed by various reforms in the field of government and politics. For example, special departments were established where people could complain about officials and the state. The establishment of Baitul Mal was also one of Umar's reforms in the economic field. All his achievements made Umar one of the most influential caliphs in history. And here are 7 stories of Umar bin Khattab that are very extraordinary. The uniqueness of Umar bin Khattab's hijrah to Medina. Moments after the revelation of the order to migrate to Medina, the Prophet ordered the companions in Mecca to immediately migrate to Medina to join the Ansar, who were already waiting for them there. The Prophet warned them to leave Mecca carefully, not in groups and sneaking at night or day. And here are 7 stories of Umar bin Khattab that are very extraordinary. The uniqueness of Umar bin Khattab's hijrah to Medina. Moments after the revelation of the order to migrate to Medina, the Prophet ordered the companions in Mecca to immediately migrate to Medina to join the Ansar, who were already waiting for them there. The Prophet warned them to leave Mecca carefully, not in groups and sneaking at night or day. This was so as not to be discovered by the polytheists of Quraysh, so that they would move to intercept them on the way. The companions understood what the apostle meant. They then migrated secretly, leaving the city of Mecca without the knowledge of its inhabitants. But it was different with Umar ibn al-Khattab. It is narrated that just before leaving for Hijrah, Umar carried a sword and slung a bow with an arrow in his hand and a staff of command. He went to the Kaaba at a time when the Quraysh were gathered there. He circumambulated the Kaaba 7 times and then went to the tomb of Ibrahim to offer prayers. After that, he went to every gathering of people one by one and said, "Wretched faces, Allah has dishonored these people. I will migrate to Medina to carry out the orders of the Messenger of Allah. Whoever wants to be mourned by his mother, wants his son to be an orphan or his wife to be a widow, please come to me behind this valley." None of them dared to answer this challenge. Finally, Umar emigrated to Medina without any threat or hindrance from the Quraysh polytheists. In fact, some weak Muslims also migrated behind him. Justice for the people despite being Jewish since becoming governor of Egypt. Umar bin Khattab occupied a magnificent palace in front of which was an empty plot of land. There was only a rickety hut that was about to collapse that belonged to an old Jew. As governor, Umar wanted a beautiful and magnificent mosque to match his palace. He felt uncomfortable with the Jewish hut on the land. Therefore, the old Jew who owned the shack was summoned to the palace. "O Jew, I plan to build a mosque on the land you are occupying. How much do you want to sell your land and hut for?" "I will not sell, O master," replied the Jew, shaking his head. "What if I pay you 3 times the usual price?" teased the governor. "Still I will not sell," said the Jew. "If I pay you 5 times as much, will you sell it?" "No, Lord, I still won't sell it, because it's the only treasure I have. Won't you regret it later?" threatened the governor. "No, Lord," he said firmly. As soon as the old Jew left his presence, Umar bin Khattab decided to dismantle the tomb. He asked that a large mosque be built on the land for the sake of the common good and to beautify the scenery of the place. The Jew who owned the land and the tomb could not do much about the governor's policy. He could only cry and continue to cry. However, he did not despair and was determined to complain about the matter to the governor's superior, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab in Medina. Upon arrival in Medina, the Jew asked the people there where the palace of the Caliph was located. After being shown, he was shocked because the Caliph did not have a palace like the Egyptian governor, who had a very magnificent palace. In fact, he was welcomed by the Caliph in the courtyard of the Prophet's mosque under a date palm tree. "What is your need to come all the way from Egypt?" Umar asked after learning that his guest came from a distant land. The Jew told the Caliph his intentions and purpose. He revealed the events that had befallen him and the Egyptian governor's arbitrariness over his land and hut. How did Umar react? He was furious. He said, "What an outrageous Umar bin Az. He has really gone too far," baited the Caliph. Umar then told the Jew to take a piece of camel bone. Of course, the Jew became confused and hesitant with the Caliph's order, which he considered strange and had nothing to do with his complaint. However, he finally took the bone and handed it over to Umar. Then Umar scratched the letter Alif from top to bottom and then made a cross in the middle of the bone with his sword. Then the bone was handed over to the Jew, who was still stunned and did not understand the intention of the Caliph. Umar only said, "Take this bone and tell Governor Umar bin Az that it is from me." "Sorry God, frankly I still don't understand. I came all the way here to ask you for justice, not this worthless bone," protested the Jew. The Caliph just smiled. He was not angry. He emphasized, "O one who demands justice, it is in that bone that lies the justice you desire." Finally, although the Jew's heart was still resentful and continued to grumble, he returned to Egypt with the bone given by the Caliph. Upon his arrival in Egypt, he handed over the bone to the governor, Umar bin Az. However, strangely, as soon as the governor received the bone, his body suddenly became shivering and his face pale with fear. Again, the Jew did not understand the situation. Moments later, the governor ordered his subordinates to dismantle the newly built mosque and for the Jewish man's hut to be rebuilt and handed back to him. Moments before the new mosque was to be demolished, the Jew said, "I'm sorry God, there's no need to demolish the mosque. I want to ask you something. Why was God so frightened and immediately ordered the demolition of the new mosque? He only received a piece of bone from Caliph Umar." "O Jew," replied Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, "know that it is just an ordinary bone. However, because it was sent by the Caliph, it turned into a stern warning to me." That is, the Jew still did not understand. The bone contained a threat from the Caliph, as if he was saying, "O Umar bin Az, remember, whoever you are now, and however high your rank and power, someday you will definitely turn into a rotten bone. Therefore, act justly like a straight alphabet, justly up and justly down. For if you do not act straight, my sword will act and cut your throat." The Jew was bowed down and so moved to hear the narrative of the governor. He was amazed at the Caliph's firm and just attitude, as well as the governor's attitude, who was very obedient to his superiors, just by accepting a piece of camel bone. It was noble and admirable. Finally, the Jew converted to Islam. Then he gave up his land and hut as whack. And the third story, the flogging of a nobleman's son. One day, while Umar ibn al-Khattab was sitting, he was suddenly approached by a man from Egypt, and he said, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, I want to seek refuge with you." Umar replied, "You have sought refuge with the one who will give you refuge. What is your problem, O young man?" The young Egyptian told me that one day I participated in a horse race. My horse managed to overtake the horse of one of the sons of Umar bin Az, the governor of Egypt, but because of that incident, he whipped me with a scourge while saying arrogantly that he was the son of a nobleman. This incident had reached the ears of his father, the governor, but the governor's son was afraid that I would report to you, and so he imprisoned me. But praise be to Allah, he had other plans. I was able to escape from prison and traveled here to meet you. Hearing the young Egyptian's complaint, Caliph Umar wrote a letter to the governor of Egypt, Umar bin Az. "When this letter reaches you, you and your son should go this Hajj season." While to the young Egyptian it was said, "Stay here until they come." Umar bin Az actually came to fulfill Umar's order to perform Hajj that year. When Caliph Umar finished the Hajj, he sat with the other Muslims, while Umar bin Az and his son sat by his side. Then the young Egyptian was asked to stand up and was given a whip by him. Likewise with the son of Umar bin Az, Sayyidina Umar also asked him to stand up. After explaining the case, the person concerned, namely Umar's son, admitted his actions. Then Sayyidina Umar invited the Egyptian youth to return the lashes he had received. The young Egyptian continued to whip the governor's son until the people present felt that justice had been served with this punishment. But as the young Egyptian continued to lash him, they became disgusted and wanted to stop the punishment. In the meantime, Umar said, "Whip the nobleman's son." The Egyptian youth replied, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, I have whipped the one who whipped me." Sayyidina Umar continued, "By Allah, had you continued, no one could have prevented you until you yourself stopped the whipping." Then to the governor, Umar bin al-As, Sayyidina Umar said, "Since when have you enslaved people when they were born by their mothers in a state of freedom?" Umar bin al-As said, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, I am not aware of the incident, nor did this Egyptian man report it to me." And the fourth story, we steal out of hunger. In a judicial hearing, Umar ibn al-Khattab was confronted with two young servants. They were accused of stealing a camel belonging to a man from Badi Musaina. The little servants looked very thin and their faces were pale. Regret and worry were evident on their shabby faces. As the punishment for theft in Islam is the severity of cutting off one's hand, perhaps they would lose one of their hands, they thought. "Why did you steal?" Sayyidina Umar asked, breaking the ice. "It is the famine season, and we are very hungry, O Amir al-Mu'minin," said the servants. Sayyidina Umar was silent for a moment, then turned his gaze to the audience. "Who is the employer of these servants?" Caliph Umar asked. Those present replied that their employer was Hattab bin Abi Balta'a. Subsequently, Sayyidina Umar requested that Hattab be brought to court. After appearing, Sayyidina Umar asked him, "O Hattab, is it true that you are the employer of these servants?" "Yes, I am, O Amir al-Mu'minin," Hattab replied rather nervously. Umar then continued, "I would have punished them had I not been informed that it was you who had hired them. But you left them so hungry that they resorted to stealing, and I will not inflict punishment except on you." Sayyidina Umar then turned to the owner of the camel and asked, "How much is your camel worth?" The owner replied, "For 100 dirhams." Sayyidina Umar then returned his gaze to Hattab, as if he wanted to pierce the heart of their employer. Hattab simply looked down. Next, Sayyidina Umar issued a very wise decision. "Go and give the owner of the camel 800 dirhams, double the price." Sayyidina Umar then also gave a decision to the servants, "You go, and do not repeat this kind of behavior again." Hearing the verdict, the servants were naturally very happy and breathed a sigh of relief. They considered that such a decision was very wise for them. The fifth story, Hakana of the Old Man. The story goes that a man came to Caliph Umar to complain about his son who had disobeyed him. In response to his complaint, Sayyidina Umar then brought his son and told him that he had disobeyed his father, and he had forgotten his rights towards his father. So the son asked Umar, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, don't we as children have rights over our father?" "Yes, of course," Sayyidina Umar replied. "What are these rights, O Amir al-Mu'minin?" asked the son. Sayyidina Umar replied, "Choosing his mother, giving him a good name, teaching him the Quran." The boy smiled and said, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, my father has not fulfilled any of these rights. My mother is an Ethiopian of the Muslim religion. They named me Jewel, which means coconut beetle, and my father has not taught me a single letter of the Quran." Sayyidina Umar turned to the man and said, "You have come to me complaining about your son's disobedience. Yet you disobeyed him before he disobeyed you. You never did good to him before he did bad to you." There's also the next story. Cover his disgrace and marry him off. One day, a man came to Caliph Umar and said, "O Amir al-Mu'minin, I have a daughter. In the days of ignorance, when she was a child, I buried her alive. But before she died, I took her back out of the ground. After Islam came, I embraced Islam, and so did she. Then my son committed a sin for which the punishment is had. Feeling ashamed, he took one sword and tried to kill himself. Fortunately, we were able to save him even though he had a wound on his neck. Then we treated her until she recovered. And now she was proposed to by a man. Amir al-Mu'minin, should I inform the man who proposed to her of this incident?" Sayyidina Umar replied, "Do you intend to reveal what Allah has concealed? By Allah, if you were to tell me about your daughter's past misfortunes, I would make you a bad example to the entire population. Marry her off as a pure Muslim woman. In the end, his daughter was married off to this man. They lived like ordinary people without any problems. As for the last story, the Caliph did not sleep during the day. When Alexandria fell to the Muslim army, Umar bin As immediately sent Muawiyah bin Khattab to convey the good news to Caliph Umar in Medina. Muawiyah arrived in Medina at noon. Hence, he suspected that Umar might be resting or taking a nap. He went straight to the Prophet's mosque. Fortunately, a servant of Umar saw him in his traveling clothes and asked him about himself and where he had come from. The messenger, Muawiyah, replied, "I have come from Alexandria." Hearing this, the servant immediately went home and informed Caliph Umar. The Caliph immediately went to the messenger, Muawiyah bin Khattab. When Sayyidina Umar arrived at the mosque, Muawiyah delivered the news of the victory of the Muslim army. Immediately, Sayyidina Umar prostrated himself, the victory of the Muslim forces. After prostrating himself, Sayyidina Umar said to the messenger, "Why didn't you come straight to me? I thought it was rest time and perhaps you were asleep." Muawiyah replied. Sayyidina Umar explained, "Forgive me. It seems that you do not have sufficient opinion about me. Who will assume the responsibility of the Caliph if I have to sleep during the day?" Said Caliph Umar bin Khattab. The sum of the stories of Caliph Umar bin Khattab. Hopefully we can take lessons from this story. Wallahu bishawab. Hopefully this is all useful.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.